Welcome mages, and welcome back to the channel Demigods One Magic World. In this video, we'll dive into the revealed cards from the Innistrad Remastered set, which is set to release on January 24, 2025. This edition brings together iconic cards from previous Innistrad blocks, offering players a fresh experience. Before we get started, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the latest spoilers. It's a small click for you, but a huge boost for the channel, so feel free to do it right now. At the top right of the cards, you'll see the expansion symbol. Its code is INR, and the cards will remain legal in the formats where they are already, though unfortunately not in standard. The set includes 88 commons, 104 uncommons, 72 rares, and 23 mythic rares, for a total of 287 cards. We'll explore the revealed cards and mechanics of the set, ending with the expectations for the remastered release. Let's start with white cards. Archangel Avacyn, Avacyn the Purifier. A legendary double-faced creature, Archangel Avacyn is a 4/4 angel with flying, vigilance, and flash, costing 3 mana and 2 white. When she enters the battlefield, she grants indestructibility to all your creatures until the end of the turn. When a non-angel creature you control dies, she transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, a 6/5 with flying that deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. Avacyn provides immediate protection to your army with her indestructibility effect. Her punishing transformation counters the tide in your favor, especially against opponents with many small creatures. Her versatility makes her a favorite in both constructed formats and Commander. Now a sample of Magic, the first returning mechanic, double-faced card that transform made a debut in the original Innistrad block. Each transforming double-faced card has 2 sides, a front side with an upward arrow symbol on the left, and a back side with a downward arrow symbol on the right. 2 key points to remember. A transformed double-faced permanent on the battlefield uses the mana cost from its front side to determine its mana value. The back side includes a color indicator, a dot on its type line, that specifies the card's colors. For example, Avacyn the Purifier is red. Lingering Souls, a sorcery costing 2 mana and 1 white, that creates 2 1/1 spirit tokens with flying. It has a flashback cost of 1 and 1 black, allowing you to cast it again from the graveyard. Second mechanic, the return of Flashback in Innistrad. Flashback allows you to cast a card from your graveyard, whether it was milled, discarded, or played previously. When casting it this way, you pay its flashback cost instead of its mana cost. The mana value of the spell remains based on its mana cost, even if cast using flashback. For example, Lingering Souls mana value is always 3. Once cast with flashback, the spell is exiled when it leaves the stack, whether it resolves or is countered. Turban Inspector, a 1/2 human soldier creature for 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, it creates a clue token. Turban Inspector offers immediate value by providing both a creature and an artifact that can generate card advantage later. Its early presence and resource generation make it a popular choice in many white strategies. Third mechanic, the return of Investigate. When a card instructs you to investigate, you create a clue token. A clue token is a colorless artifact with 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. In blue, we will find the Lantern Bearer, a 1/1 spirit creature for 1 blue, with flying, and Disturb for 2 and 1 blue. If cast from the graveyard using Disturb, it becomes an aura that grants +1/+1 and flying to another creature. A low-cost card ideal for tempo or spirit strategies. It provides an early aerial threat and remains useful in the late game thanks to its Disturb ability, making your other creatures even more dangerous. Fourth mechanic, Disturb. Once a card with Disturb is in your graveyard, you can cast its back side by paying its Disturb cost instead of its mana cost, which it no longer has. The backsides of these top cards include an ability that exiles them if they would be put in a graveyard from anywhere, whether as spells or permanents. For example, if Lantern removal is countered, it will be exiled. The same applies if it will be put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Snapcaster Mage, a 2/1 human wizard creature for 1 and 1 blue, with flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may give flashback to an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard until the end of the turn. Snapcaster Mage remains a flagship card for blue. With its ability to replace spells from the graveyard, it fits seamlessly into control, tempo, and even combo strategies. Cackling Counterpart, instant costing 1 and 2 blue, creates a token that is a copy of a target creature you control and has flashback for 5 and 2 blue. Among the returning cards, 2 feature the Soulbound keyword. The 5th mechanic will cover, such as the Dead-Eye Navigator. Soulbound allows a creature to pair with an unpaired creature you control to enhance both. When a creature with Soulbound enters the battlefield, you may pair it with another unpaired creature you control. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield, and you control an unpaired creature with Soulbound, you may pair those 2 creatures. A pair always consists of exactly 2 creatures. A pair of creatures does not change unless one leaves the battlefield, stops being a creature, or another player gains control of one. Each creature in the pair gains a benefit, but they are not otherwise bound. They attack and block separately, are targeted by spells and abilities separately, and so on. The Mausoleum Wanderer, 1/1 spirit creature with flying for 1 blue. Whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. You can also sacrifice it to counter an instant or sorcery unless its controller pays X, where X is the Wanderer's power. And finally, Think Twice. Instant costing 1 and 1 blue, you draw a card and it has flashback for 2 and 1 blue, a classic in control and tempo deck. No surprise, black was the color that was most revealed, with Blood Artist, 0/1 vampire creature for 1 and 1 black. Whenever a creature dies, you gain 1 life and the opponent loses 1 life. Blood Artist is a very powerful card in aggro and sacrifice decks, with its ability to punish every creature loss, whether it's on your side or the opponent's. It slowly generates a life advantage, often devastating in prolonged games. Voldaren Blood Mage, 2/1 vampire creature for 1 and 1 black. When this creature dies, or another non-token creature dies under your control, create a blood token. 6th mechanic of this video. Blood tokens are a handy way to optimize your hand and much more. A blood token is a colorless artifact with pay 1, tap, discard a card, sacrifice this token, draw a card. You can give up a less useful card in exchange for something potentially more interesting. You might even discard a card with Madness to lose nothing at all. As shown by the Bloodbath Summoner, blood tokens aren't necessarily just for being sacrificed. The Midhook Massacre. Enchantment costing X and 2 black. When the Midhook Massacre enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X/-X. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. Introduced during the Innistrad calamities, assimilation allows you to combine 2 typical threats into a colossal problem for your opponents. Cards with assimilation, the 7th mechanic, do not transform traditionally. However, if you own and control the specific cards or an assimilation pair, both are exiled and returned as a single card on the battlefield. Like other assimilated permanents, the Chittering Host of the Hermetic Moon is a unique creature represented by 2 cards. It does everything a creature does, such as attacking opponents, having abilities that help your other creatures attack opponents, and so on. It is a single creature, so a spell that says destroy target creature will eliminate it entirely. If you need to sacrifice a permanent, you can sacrifice the tutoring host. The differences become apparent once the tutoring host leaves the battlefield. Wherever the permanent goes, both cards go with it and are revealed face up. If it returns to your hand, you will recover both Midnight Scavengers and Graph Rats in your hand. If the tutoring host is placed in a specific spot in your library, for example on top or bottom, you choose the order of the two cards. You will also find Tuskaidekaphobia, Innistrad Invasion, and Liliana of the Veil, the last two being well known and playable in Standard. Very few cards revealed for red, but we find familiar mechanics such as Madness, a mechanic that allows you to cast a card when you discard it, as seen with the 8th mechanic in Falkenrath Gorger. When you discard a card with Madness, exile it instead of putting it in your graveyard. This triggers a triggered ability. When this ability resolves, you can cast the exile card for its Madness cost. If you do, great! The spell is now on the stack. Like any other spell, you can respond to it. If you don't cast the card, it goes into your graveyard. Madness does not give you the opportunity to cast it later. Note that you need a reason to discard the card in the first place. You can't discard the card just because you want to. It might be to pay a cost, or maybe because the effect of a spell or ability tells you to do so. It could even be because you end your turn with too many cards in hand. Whatever the reason, you discard the card and the condition will be fulfilled. Escalate is a mechanic found on some model cards that allows you to pay an additional cost to choose extra modes. You can always choose a mode without paying the additional cost. If a card with Escalate has 3 modes, you can pay the Escalate cost once to choose 2 modes or twice to choose all 3. No matter how many times you pay the Escalate cost, the mana value of the spell doesn't change. For example, the mana value of Borrowed Hostility is always 1, whether you pay 1 or 4 to cast it. More classic, Mass Hysteria gives haste to all creatures. Return of another mechanic, the 9th, Miracle. If the first card you draw in a turn is a card with Miracle, you can immediately reveal it. Make sure to do so before it mixes with the other cards in your hand. If you reveal it this way, you can cast it for its Miracle cost instead of its mana cost. Since you cast it during the resolution of a triggered ability, the card types do not affect the timing restrictions regarding when you can cast it. If the first card you draw during an opponent's turn is a sorcery, you can reveal it and cast it for its Miracle cost. You can also choose not to reveal the card you draw if you're not currently seeking miracles. As always, the mana value of a spell is based on its mana cost, not what you paid to cast it. Very few cards for green, but we already have the Spider Spawning, the Elven World Mysteries, and the Young Wolf, which has Undying and returns to the battlefield after its death with a +1/+1 counter on it. If it has at least one +1/+1 counter on it when it dies, Undying does not trigger, and it simply remains in its owner's graveyard. Of course, if you find a way to get rid of the +1/+1 counter provided by Undying, you can trigger this again. Let's now move on to the gold cards, and the legendary Edgar Markov is making a return. 3 mana, 1 red, 1 white, 1 black. With haste and vigilance, the legendary 4/4 vampire will have Eminence, a commander-specific ability, and will obviously interact with vampires. The spell Queller has also been revealed, which allows interaction with opponent's spells. And finally, Handmaster of the Fells, human werewolf creature costing 2 mana, 1 red, 1 green, transforming during the day and night cycle. This double-faced card provides benefits when it transforms, dealing damage and generating wolf tokens. Finally, in this last section, we'll find the colorless cards. The Eldrazi are back, as seen with It of the Hobbit Swarm, which showcases the return of the last mechanic, Emerge, but most notably Emrakul, the Promised Hand. Emrakul is a legendary Eldrazi costing 13 colorless mana. This card is renowned for its devastating impact on the battlefield, allowing you to take control of an opponent's turn, which can turn the tide of the game. That's it. We've covered the card that showcase the richness and diversity of the strategies available in Innistrad Remastered, which will bring mechanics and themes beloved by players. Some questions remain. For example, this art from Innistrad shows Sorin, but nothing has been revealed yet. How many Eldrazi will come back? What about green? Thank you for joining me through Innistrad. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to stay updated on new cards. Stroll through the channel and see you in the next video.